What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review. This time we're taking a look at Stand By Me, directed by Rob Reiner. Stand By Me is based off the Stephen King novella known as The Body. Now, this is a coming of age type of story. This movie is about these four friends who one summer go on a journey to find the body of a recently deceased boy in the small town of Castle Rock, Oregon. While on this journey, they pretty much have reflections of self-discovery about themselves. And like I said, this movie is a coming of age story. It's about how these four friends pretty much discover something about themselves, and during this hike to find this dead boy, they, in a sense, they kind of grow up. And that's pretty much what the story of Stand By Me is. It's a very, very relatable story. And as a movie, this is a really, really good movie. Anyone can relate to being a 12-year-old and having friends and doing things with friends and sharing your most intimate moments with your friends. And Stand By Me is one of those movies that encapsulates that perfectly. It's a coming of age story that still resonates more now than it ever did when it was made back in 1986. And a lot of that credit goes to the screenwriting of this movie. This movie is perfectly written. From a casting standpoint, you can't get any better. This movie has Will Wheaton, River Phoenix, Corey Feldman, Jerry O'Connell. These four, who play Gordy, Chris, Teddy, and Vern respectively, they pretty much anchor this entire movie. If these four did not have the chemistry that they would have had, this movie just as a movie, this would not have worked. But since the chemistry is so outstanding and they bounce off so well with one another, this movie is still remembered and is still highly reviewed. And the relationships between these four, is outstanding. Pretty much the strongest relationship out of the group is the relationship between Chris and Gordy, who of the four, these two are really really close to one another, and Chris more or less acts as a big brother slash father figure to the character of Gordy, and Gordy, he's been going through his own troubles. You know, his older brother Dennis, played by John Cusack, was killed in an automobile accident, and because of that, his parents have become very, very distant from him, which leads to a great scene near the end of the movie where Gordy just breaks down crying once they discover the body of the boy named Ray Brower. Gordy just breaks down crying about his brother and how his father hates him, and it's a really, really emotional scene where Chris is like, "No, your father doesn't hate you. He just doesn't understand you." It's great stuff, and Will Wheaton's performance is fantastic. You know, Will Wheaton as a young actor, he can balance so many different emotions, and he's never cringy. Now, child actors have a reputation of not really being all that particularly good at acting, but these four are an exception. These four are talented. You know, you have Corey Feldman who plays Teddy, and Corey Feldman. A lot of the comedy really comes from Corey Feldman and Chris O'Connell, who the two of them, they're the comic relief pretty much, and they're really really funny. I thought Corey Feldman as Teddy, he's really funny, but he also has his own thing that he's going through. He's pretty much the son of a loony of a father who nearly killed him by almost slicing off his ear. You know, Vern, he's pretty much the fat boy of the group, and then you have Chris, who is like the rebel, the renegade, and Gordy is like the sensitive one. He's the heart and soul, pretty much. And again, all four of them encompass these characters perfectly, and their chemistry is what makes this movie work. And the dialogue between them is something that kids would at 12 years old would say, having these random conversations, and it just works. Now, on the flip side, you have a really good supporting cast as well. That includes John Cusack, as I mentioned, who has a couple of flashback scenes as Dennis, and we really get to see just how fond and close Dennis and Gordy were to one another. You know, they had a really strong relationship, and that shows in the flashback scenes. You have Keith Sutherland, who plays the bully Ace Merle, and I thought Keith Sutherland as Ace Merle, I thought he was really really good. Now this is Keith Sutherland pretty much at the beginning of his career, but you can tell that this man that he had acting down pat. And what really fascinates me about Keith Sutherland, especially in his younger years, is that when you look at his face, particularly in his eyes, there's some sort of malice that Keith Sutherland has in his eyes that gives him a very menacing type of. It gives him a very menacing look, and when you apply that to a villain in a movie, it just stands out and it works. And the fact that as Eighth Merle, Keith Sutherland has a smooth, commanding presence. Like he never shouts or gets angry. He just has like this stoic voice, and he has like this posture to him. It's a really good performance. I can't praise Keith Sutherland enough as Ace Merle. He really comes across as a threat in the scenes where he and his gang come across, Gordy and the boys, and and it can get rough, especially near the end where Ace is about to pretty much do some harm to Chris, and then Gordy pulls out a gun, pretty much saving Chris's life. It's a great scene. It's good stuff. I like it a lot. Rob Reiner's directing in this movie is fantastic. He captures that aesthetic of the late 50s, early 60s to a T, with the music, from the wardrobe, from the costumes, the way the kids acted and bounced off one another. Like these tall tales they have pretty much convinced themselves of happening. Like there's this one funny scene where they go into a junkyard, and there's like this old man with a dog and named Chopper, and they pretty much created this myth that whenever a kid would go into that junkyard, the owner would say, "Chopper, sick his balls," when he was really saying "Chopper, sick him." But they created this myth around everything. That childhood imagination, and that childhood imagination plays great with Gordy, who is the writer of the group, tells them the story of this story that he's writing about a character called Lardass, and we actually see that play out in a scene, which is actually pretty cool. Another thing that I really enjoyed is that I like how this whole movie is pretty much told as an extended flashback, and we find out that Gordy, as an adult, played by Richard Dreyfuss, was actually narrating and telling the story, and I thought that was great as well. And the whole story flashback when older Gordy reads a story about how Chris was killed in a restaurant by getting stabbed in the throat, and that pretty much set the chain of events of Gordy pretty much telling a memoir about how he was 12, and the whole thing of having these friends when you were 12, and Teddy and Vern drifted away from Chris and Gordy, though Chris and Gordy pretty much remained close with one another to the point where they went off to college together, and even though they hadn't seen each other within like a 10-year period, that friendship between them really stay true. And I like all that stuff. That stuff is great. And I give Rob Reiner all the credit for creating that, for making just give this movie like a real good emotional punch to it. This movie does have a lot of fun moments to it, but also has a lot of serious and tender moments as well. And it's a perfectly even balance between the two. Like when this movie needs to be funny, it could be funny. When it needs to take itself seriously, it will hit you in the heartstrings, and it will really tug at your soul and really take you back to a time when you're a 12-year-old kid with your friends, and you're just discovering life for the first time, pretty much as you're going into your teenage years, which was one step away from your adult years. And this movie covers that fantastically. Can't praise it enough. So, yeah, Stand by Me for me is a perfect 10. I think this movie is utterly fantastic from a casting standpoint, from a directorial standpoint. I find this to be a flawless movie, and a movie that can still resonate no matter what age or year you were born in. It has a timeless story that will always resonate. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for Stand By Me. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.